So for the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about the need to get free. But how do you get free? What is free? You know, I'm so struck by the story of Jesus walking with his disciples up to this big pool where there were tons of people who were sick all around. And Jesus walks up to one in particular man and he says, what's going on? And he finds out that this man is lame. Well, and he says, how long have you been this way? 38 years. Wow. Years and years of pain. What's going on with you? And well, as the story goes, when an angel will come and stir the waters, and at that time when the waters are stirred, the first person in gets healed, but I've got no one to take me into the pool. And so Jesus now knows the problem. He knows the tenure, how long it's been, and he knows the hindrance that's keeping this guy from getting completely free. But instead of addressing any one of those three, he just goes straight for his heart and says, I have a question for you. Do you want to be healed? This is the question I believe Jesus is asking us tonight. Do you want to be healed? Because we can go on and on about here's all the issues and here's what's gone on and here's our reasons for why we can't. And in the middle of that, Jesus wants to stop and he wants to ask you a question. Do you want to be healed? This is counseling 101. You can't take anyone further than they want to go. No matter what leader leads what life group, no matter what amazing, fiery speech you're given, no matter what different things we put into 1 hour and 45-minute chunk on Wednesday night, only you can answer that question. And so I'm asking it tonight. Do you want to be healed? Because I believe the other side of that question, where the man gets to hear Jesus say, then get up, take your mat, and walk, is possible. But it rests on the answer to that question Jesus is asking you, is do you want to get healed? And my belief as I've walked through this series so far and heard from so many of you and our leaders that are just saying, hey, God is doing a great thing, my belief is that the answer tonight is from you, yes, I want to get healed. And yes, I want to stay free. So tonight what I want to do is I actually want to jump back to an Old Testament story. And I want to look into the life of someone who gives us some hope that freedom is possible. To be honest, if you go looking into the Bible, people who walk in sexual freedom, it can sometimes get a little discouraging. Because you're going to the Bible to get it and you read about everybody's kind of failures and bombs. But one guy really stands above the rest. And so we're going to look at his story. His name is Joseph. And if you know Joseph, you know that he came from a family where he was kind of the favored son, and his dad showed him that. It ticked off all the other brothers, and next thing you know, Joseph is being thrown into a pit. They think about killing him. They push time out and go, hey, wait a minute, maybe not do that. Let's make some money off this gig, and let's sell him. And so he gets sold into slavery, and he's off to Egypt. And that's where we're going to pick up the story in Genesis chapter 39, verse 1 through 9. It says, now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had, in house and field. You just get the sense God's presence was everywhere Joseph stepped. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, Potiphar had no concern about anything but the food that he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, like me. And after a time, I added that part, kind of one of those in italics parts. But anyway, and after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. She was not just inviting him to nap time, okay? But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" I hope you get the picture here. He has been ditched by his family, sold into slavery. If there was ever a time when things could get a little fuzzy for Joseph, it'd be right now. But instead of just drifting off into a fog, Joseph makes sure that things stay crystal clear. And I want you to hear the last words of what I just read one more time. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Joseph knew how to address sin. Tonight, I'm going to give you 3 freedom weapons to help you get free and stay free. Okay? And freedom weapon number 1, you just got in the life of Joseph. Weapon number one is this. You have to call sin what it is. It's sin. It's not an issue, not a problem, or a struggle. It is a sin against God. This recognition sets a lot of things in order. Once you realize, wait a minute, this is sin that I'm doing. This is what Jesus died for. This is the thing that made the Father turn away because of the avalanche of sin that was on his Son, and one of these was mine. If it's just a problem, you'll never get over it. But Joseph says, this is sin. I can't go there because of that. It is sin. And he says it out loud. That is a very big key. I find that when people are struggling with many things, the out loud factor is very difficult for them. It's very difficult to get it out, that there is something on the inside. But here's the deal. By putting it inside, whether it's shame or embarrassment or whatever reason, by keeping it on the inside, you are sending a loud message. And here's what your message is. I've got this. I've got this. And the only problem with that is that by you keeping it inside, you are trusting you. And when it comes to something of a sinful nature, let me teach you something. Is that when you start trusting yourself, you are putting one foot into your grave. You can't trust yourself with sin. Sin is not managed. Sin is crucified. And the way that Jesus teaches us to crucify sin is to confess it and to say it out loud for what it is. Call it sin and deal with it. James chapter 5, verse 16 is a passage that was alluded to last week. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. For the prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working. In other words, you're not just going to, okay, from this point forward, I'll do better. That's one foot in the grave. Or that was like in my sophomore year of high school. That was like crazy. Everybody does stuff when they're sophomores in high school that's crazy. No, this is what God's saying. No, confess your sin. That is where you get healed. The reason is because confession of sin equals humility. You need something. God always lands on humility. He's working on humility in us. And I just hope that over the last couple of weeks, if sins have been brought up, that humility has called you to go forward and call it what it is, sin. And I want to challenge you to walk in a community that will help you identify what sin is. This is what I've always said. My definition of community is a group of people who will allow you to be weak, but will not allow you to be wicked. They're able to get up in your world and say, I know you think that's gray, but that's not gray, that's black. It's not just like, you're thinking it's nap time. It's not nap time. It's leading you to sexual immorality. And there's a problem. Let me just say one thing here. I think that one of the ways that things get fuzzy for us is due to the onslaught of media that we consistently get, that we get so much, we watch so many commercials, listen to so many songs, we don't know what is sin and what is not. And therefore, I believe that a lot of times the things inside of us have been melted down to a lukewarm approach to holiness. And therefore, we have to step up to the plate and realize that if we're different, we have to look at media in the eye and say, this is not just a commercial. This is not just a movie. This is not just a song. Hey guys, on that note, let me just say something to you. And even say a few words that I don't want to say. If there is a song on your iPod or your computer or in your car on a CD that uses the word bitch, slut, hoe, or whore, go home tonight and delete it. It's sin. It's speaking identity. It's not just a song. And we have consistently let things like that go because we like a tune. And in doing so, we go in tune with a sin of putting identity on women. And we as men are supposed to rise up and put an end to that, instead putting honor on them. So I challenge you tonight to take it up a notch, to call sin, sin, and to follow in this first freedom weapon, whatever yours is. Now, along that same note, let me push pause. Because I know that there's some people here tonight that are probably asking a question along the lines of this. Carl, what if the sin that's going on in my head, the sin that racks my soul, is not a sin that I committed? It's a sin that someone sinned against me. And I just want to push time out here to say this, is that if statistics are true, then we know that about 1 in 3 or 4 girls have been molested. About 1 in 6 guys have. My prayer is that that's not true for anyone in this room. But on the first week, I talked about how that sexuality, it's not just a physical thing, that it affects people emotionally, relationally, spiritually, feel in the deep end, on the deep insides of them. And specifically tonight, I want to address those of you that have been sinned against. And I want to say this, and I want you to listen to me. No matter what the situation was, no matter what the occurrence happened, no matter what feelings you had in the moment, it was not your fault. Listen to me again. It was not your fault. So many times I'll talk to people who are abused and they'll say things like, yeah, but I shouldn't have put myself in that situation, or I should have said no earlier, or I actually even felt good at times, and that's even more sick and perverted and warped, and I'm a mess, and so I just keep it on the inside. And I want you to hear me again say this. It was not your fault. And God, as your Father, wants to come to those wounded places. And I'm just speaking as a dad of 4. I can't imagine a God of billions. And how he must feel, and how he must want to come in a rushing flood and come into those places and speak healing over you. For those of you who said, what do I do? How do I get this out? I think that really it's interesting that your remedy is very similar to those of us that are dealing with not being sinned against, but the choices of sin we've made. The remedy is to still confess it. I was even interviewing someone recently who was abused. And they talked about having to say it out loud almost made it reality. They just didn't want to say it out loud. Everything began to change when they could get with a trusted person and say, I need to tell you something I've never told anyone before. And to get it out on the table. And a lot of tears shed and a lot of hardships. And let me just say, if families or churches haven't had patience or grace, my prayer is that as you bring that up in trusted community and discipleship, that you'll find a community of acceptance and love who will walk you into those places of pain. And we'll be able to say, here's what's going on. That's why we're encouraging every person to do the 7 steps to freedom over the course of this semester. To go to those places of pain and let the Father speak into them. My prayer for you tonight is that tonight might be the first time you're able to actually say, I think I could tell someone that. That you're not confessing sin you've done. You're confessing sin against you. But the premise is still the same. God wants to bring healing in that place. Freedom weapon number 1 for all of us in the room. We've got to call sin, sin. And we've got to go to the plate. We've got to go to trusted people and say, I've got some stuff that I've got to unearth. And we've got to be in a community that can help us spot it and say, no, that's not right. Freedom weapon number 1, call sin a sin. And you'll be able to go forward. Let's go on with our story in Genesis. And let's look at Joseph. Let's talk about how the situation gets a little bit more intense in the midst of what he's dealing with this lady who's Potiphar's wife. And I want to read the next 3 verses 10, 11, and 12 of Genesis chapter 39. And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her or to be with her. Do you see that little invitation? It's like, okay, then just be beside. That's the managing sin mentality. But he says no across the board. Verse 11, but one day when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand, awkward, and fled and got out of the house. Everybody say, got out of the house. This is huge. This is massive. I love what Joseph is teaching us here. I love that what Joseph is showing us here is that he is willing to have a very awkward moment and run off. We don't know what he's wearing. Hopefully some whitey-tidies or something. But she's got his garment, and he is out of there. And he is gone out of the house. Joseph was a fantastic runner. And with that in mind, he teaches us freedom weapon number 2. And I want you to get it tonight. Here it is. Number 2. You don't drift away from sin. You run from it. You run from it. If it really is sin, you don't manage it. You don't lie beside it. You run from sin with all your heart. And you do whatever it takes to make sure that there's a growing distance between you and that sin. Now, what does that really look like? I'd like to look at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. This is a very familiar passage to many people. But I want you to hear this challenge from Paul. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us what? With endurance, the race that's set for us. It seems like people who are walking with God know how to identify sin and then run. Get rid of what's entangling and then run. So the question you may be asking is, great, then how do I do that? How do I run? Let's make this very practical, okay? Because whenever I speak with great counsels, I always say, what do you tell people who are like, okay, Carl, this is very motivating, that's great and all, but I need help at about 1 in the morning. 1 in the morning, the emotion of your sermon is long gone, and I need a weapon in that moment that helps me stand strong. I need a weapon that helps me when I'm alone with my girlfriend. I need a weapon that helps me when it's just me and my computer and I'm back home for Christmas. What do I do here? First of all, you have to know that there are addictions and there are places of consistent sin. I asked Ricky Shillette how he would identify addiction, a trusted counselor in this area. He said, addiction is when the activity itself controls you, so you are willing to risk whatever it might be in order to get a need met, and you will rearrange your life to get your fix. Joseph was not willing to risk whatever it might be. But if there's places in your life where you're rearranging things to get your fix, if there's places in your life where they're just consistently going back to sin, then here's what you need to notice. All of these are sin patterns. And every sin pattern has a pattern, okay? You don't fall into sin. That's wrong terminology. You choose sin. And you choose sin usually over steps. Now, most of the time, because you're probably not like maliciously trying to sin most of the time, you don't even realize that there's certain patterns that happen. But I found when I start talking to people about sexual sin specifically, I can typically help them identify patterns that are going on. And if you have a pattern, you can call it a ritual if you would like, your goal in running from sin is to go back and identify the pattern, those negative things, and to set up a wall right in the middle of that pattern to make sure that it gets stopped. Okay? Let me just give you a real basic example of what I'm talking about. Years ago, I had a leader that I was helping. That was very thankful for this leader. He led many people to Jesus. He loved God in a passionate way, but could not kick his addiction to lust, and was consistently struggled by that. And he would call me when he sinned, and he would confess it. And to be honest, it was almost like his confession kind of turned from humbling in such a way that it would lead to the fruit of repentance and obedience. But instead, it was kind of like he was just checking off his list. I go home, I fall into sin, I call Carl, I repent, and I can do it all over again. Kind of go to the priest, say it, so I can go live my life. It's almost like I did what the Bible says. But it wasn't taking him to humility. It was just repeated sin over and over and over again. And honestly, we were both getting a little frustrated. I don't know what to do. I don't live with you. I can't walk into your room and say, stop, not a good idea, go to bed. I can't. I don't know how to do that. So one time, I'm actually trying to talk him through. Now, tell me what goes on. And through this conversation, I have some eye-opening moments. What I realized is that his consistent struggle is self-gratification. So what we identified is that late at night, there would be times when he would come in because he worked heavy loads. And so he would come in late at night. He lived with about 4 other guys, and there would be no guys in the house. And he would just, his little introverted self would kind of kick in like, whew, I could just kind of relax. And he would go to the cabinet. He would grab a bag of chips. He'd go sit on the couch. He'd turn on SportsCenter. And he would sit there. And from that place of just vegging out, typically he would go into patterns of fantasy that then he would eventually give over and give himself to different lustful actions. And we notice that trend over and over and over again. Now, chips are not a bad thing, okay? Especially like those kettle jalapeno ones are really good. Chips are a good thing. SportsCenter is not a bad thing, unless your wife's trying to talk to you and you're not paying attention to her. Not that I've ever done that, but I've heard that people have. Those things are not evil in themselves. But I had to tell my friend, you have a ritual. You have a pattern. So you are not allowed to go home when no one's there and go grab a bag of chips. Your wall has to kick in. When you reach for the cabinet, if you really want to be healed, when you reach for the cabinet, you cannot eat a chip until you call me. That's where people start calling Christians ridiculous. Where you call them? I'll call my friend to see if I can eat some chips. People are like, yeah, Christians, they're just weird. But he had to put up his wall. And if he did eat chips, I would say, what is your consequence? I can't put a consequence on you. I'm not going to be legalistic and do that. I'm not going to have you point a finger at me and say, dang, well, Carl makes me do all these things. If you want to be healed, you need to put a consequence on yourself. So he'd say, fine, if I eat chips without calling you, I'll pay you $20. Oh, wait a minute. Put some money into it, it all changes. Everybody's like, money, wow, we're so legalistic. No, just back to the question, do you want to be healed? This is what I'm talking about. So he couldn't grab a bag of chips without calling me, or then I'd make $20 off the deal. I didn't want to make any money off this deal. I wanted him to get free. And as he put that wall in, he's beginning to get free. If you would call me, hey, I'm at home. Nobody's here. I'm grabbing a bag of chips. All right, bro, I'm going to ask you in the morning how you did. That set a wall to set him free. Are you with me? You have to identify what your negative patterns are and stick a wall in there. And your wall always involves somebody else, not you sucking it up and getting tougher. So when someone calls me and they're like, I'm so sorry, bro, I just fell into sin this weekend. What'd you do? Well, I went home for the weekend. My parents weren't there, and I was there with their 24 TVs and our 13 computers. I don't know what happened. And after I kick them in the hiney, then I'm going, all right, bro, I love you, but why did you not tell me you were going home for the weekend and that your parents weren't going to be there? You went back to old sin patterns, and you did not put up your wall. You see, that's what I'm talking about. If you want to be healed, you have to be good at building walls. You got to be good at making sure that all this stuff is set in stone so that you don't give yourself into it. So I want you to identify those things and be crystal clear. If your roommate moves out and you struggle with late nights, get a sleeping bag and put it on the room and put it in your other roommate's room. Do you want to be healed? Put up a wall. If you and your boyfriend are struggling physically, you're not falling into sin, you're choosing it. And so you need to make a curfew. And if you're going to break that curfew, you need to involve someone. We had a leader who got married a couple years ago, and this leader would find themselves, they lived very intense lives, and then they got engaged. And it was like, when you're engaged, like you never see each other, it feels like. And that's when you have to do all this wedding planning and all this stuff. It's very frustrating. Then you have fights, and you feel like you stay up till 3 a.m. making out just to get over the fight. And it could just be this tense time. So this leader starts to see this trend. I'm just being real, okay? I'm just being real. And so this leader sees this trend. So I start getting texts almost every night. Me and my fiance are doing wedding invitations. It's midnight. We're by ourselves. Ask me in the morning how we did. That's the mark of someone who wants to get healed. Action in the struggle is the mark of someone who wants to get healed. And then we're just like, yeah, we're just engaged. We never see each other, and these things happen, and we're going to get married one day. It was action accompanied in the struggle. Now, girls, I need to talk to you about something, okay? Girls, all eyes right here. At this point in time, I'm probably motivating some dudes out there if they're dating you. And they're thinking to themselves, that's it. I'm going to rise up, be a man of God. We're going to have a curfew because Carl said that. And then we're going to make sure we stick to that curfew, okay? And so what's going to happen is y'all are going to have a fight. You're not going to see each other for a long time. Y'all are going to have a fight, and then the curfew's going to hit. The dude is going to start remembering Carl said, okay? And so he's going to say, he's turning and say, oh, sorry, it's like midnight. My mom said nothing ever good happens after midnight, and so that's our curfew. And so I got to go. At that point, look at me, ladies, everybody right here. If you want him to be a man of God, let him go. Don't pull the physical touch card on me right there, okay? I don't need to know your love language. Let him go. I'm telling all these men to rise up and be men of God. If you keep him there, you are you are kindling something inside of him that he's trying to not have kindled, okay? And because you're not married, there's no place to go home together and be together and satisfy what you're awakening. Are you with me? So I'm giving a very blunt conversation here to say, let him go. Even if it means, I'm sorry, we need to talk about this fight tomorrow. Let him go. Girls, say, let him go. Well, they did not appreciate that. I am not on the girls' top 10 list tonight. Guys, if they're going to let you go, let me teach you how to leave in such a way that your girlfriend does not break up with you in the morning for the way that you left, as my wife should have done multiple times. Because oftentimes we're like, okay, midnight, got to go. Okay, high five. Woo! Okay, we're out. And then we run off. And she's like, oh, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more. Nope, Carl said we're leaving. It's midnight. Bye. And we're running out the door. And then she goes, can I just have a hug? So you okay? And then you lean over and you give what Blair called the two-pat hug. Okay. And then you're off, and you're like, no, I want to be like hugged, So you get into this deal. So guys, I'm going to teach you how to leave so you can leave, okay? Because girls, we've learned all the statements we say to guys when they ask us out and we don't want to go out with them. We say, wow, I'm honored. No, thank you. We know how to do that. Guys, I never taught you how to say anything. I'm going to teach you what to say so that you don't get in a fight every time you leave your girlfriend's house, okay? Here's what you say. And you're going to all practice this, even if, you're single, married, whatever, just say it. Everybody say this together. Men, only men. I really don't want to leave. But sadly, I must. In order to honor you and to honor God, I have to go. But here's when I'll see you next. And I cannot wait. Hug. Bye. Let's practice. Everybody got that? Y'all good with that? Put in your own language, but however you're going to do it. Tell her, I really don't want to leave, but sadly I must. In order to honor you and to honor God. Okay, everybody got it? I have to go, and here's when I'll see you next. Give her some hope, not just, all right, catch you next Tuesday. Is everybody with me here? All right. Well, hopefully you've got number 1 down, and you've got number 2 down. All right? Now, I want to make sure that we give you number 3. In order to get number 3, I want to read Genesis chapter 39, verse 19 through 23, the last part of this story. Because up till now, I've been giving you the attitudes and behaviors of the one who's in the fight. I want to turn it now to the revelation you need to have about God in order for you to be set free indeed. Okay? Verse 19 through 23. As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, "This is the way your servant treated me," his anger was kindled. In other words, she lied, Joseph's in trouble. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. This is huge, and I hope you get it. Because I did not get it. I've read this story a million times my whole life. And until I was studying for this series, I read this multiple times, and it dawned on me. 3 times in this chapter it says, and the Lord was with Joseph. It ends, I've always known how it ends with him in prison going, this kind of stinks. But realizing that it talks about how the steadfast love of God was with Joseph. and it hits me, he is so caught up with the love of God in the midst of everything he's gone through that it's motivating enough for him to say no to sin. Freedom weapon number 3, write it down. You must be convinced that what you are running to is more satisfying than what you are running from. Freedom weapon number 3, you must be convinced that who you are running to is more satisfying than what you are running from. And you need to get this, because here's the deal. Joseph has got a pretty sweet job working for this guy named Potiphar. It seems like that job would be a pretty cool thing to have for anyone. But in the midst of it, he's then offered sex with Potiphar's wife. And seems like nobody's going to know about that. No one's even in the house. So, and maybe in this little illustration, you have two sides here. You have Joseph's opportunity to work in this place seems like a banqueting table fit for a king. However, if he's going to, say no to this whole deal, it could end up he gets terminated. His job is done. He's over, and then he might even get thrown in prison. Prison, firing, trash can, right? That does not sound good. Girl finds me attractive. That sounds good. But somehow, once again, in the midst of what could be confusion, Joseph's able to switch it and say, I'm not going to let this get fuzzy on me. I'm not going to trick my brain into thinking that this is okay. I've called sin what it is. It's sin. I'm going to get it out there and speak it boldly. I'm going to run from it. And in the midst of that, he's able to switch it and say, no, God is my banqueting table. This sounds very familiar to Song of Solomon chapter 2. In verse 2 through 5, and again, stick with me, dudes, because I know this is the part that you're like, great. He's bringing Song of Solomon into the whole deal. As a lily among brambles, so is my love among the young women. As an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. With great delight I sat in his shadows. That whole first part is God speaking to his child. The next part, what great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am sick with love. This is not someone going, but I kind of wish I could go back to sin. This is, I am lovesick when I'm not with him. So the love of God is so burning inside of her that she's saying, everything else is trash to me. Everything else, the cheap thrills, the late nights, the wrong decisions, the clicks on the computer, the things that I've done that nobody knows about, it's trash to me. He is my banqueting table. Now, here's what's difficult about banqueting tables. What's difficult is I get to be a part of the banqueting table. So here I am with my banqueting table. This is great. This is awesome. I'm glad I'm not fasting, aren't you? Wait a minute, you are fasting. You're not eating it. So here I am, talking about how wonderful God's love is. I'm at the banqueting table, how wonderful it is, but you don't really know. But I do. But here's the deal. The reason is because if you do not personally taste and see that the Lord is good, you'll live off my revelation, my sermon, it'll make it to about 9:30. But if you've tasted and seen that he's good, if you've said, God, strike me with your love and I'll meet with you every day, then what ends up happening is you get to taste the banquet. But a lot of you haven't tasted the banquet. You've done the religious duties and you've done your thing, but you haven't tasted the banquet. So tonight, some people need to start tasting the banquet. Who wants the banquet? Let's go. Come on. Woo! Come on, bust it up. We got Twinkies. Come on. Rolls. Woo! Run to the back. Come on. Orange. Who needs an orange? Anybody need an orange? Come on. Anybody like oranges? You will never forget this the rest of your life. There, Nate. You missed it. Who needs an orange? Come on, dudes. I want to see who can catch. Come on. No more oranges. Come on, guys. Watch out on the apples. Give them the rolls. Come on. Marshmallows. Come on, Jeff. Give them the... Give them the marshmallows. Anybody not get something? Who did not get something? Who didn't get something? Oh, this is Marshmallow Land right here. Big one. Can you catch it? Come on, there it is. Good job. Good catch. All right, start taking it down. Eat everything in the world. Go ahead. Keep eating it. Blair, if you're not going to eat them, I'm going to give away. Okay. Who wants an orange? Oh, come on. Oh, wait a minute. We got another apple. He's still good. Watch out. Woo! Come on, eat it up. Come on, take those Twinkies down. Come on. Now, for the rest of your life, you will remember the dwelling place that I gave out Twinkies and marshmallows and apples and rolls. But my prayer is more than you chomping on a Twinkie. Hope you're not fasting. That'd be not good. My prayer is that as you're sitting there tonight, revelation is starting to sink in. That you don't have to sit there and watch everybody else feast at the banqueting table. It's for you too. Tonight a choice can be made that who you're running to is more satisfying than what you're running from. The reason I know this, guys, is because I was not born out of the womb a pure man who's had no sins or struggles. It's not my story. And I wish it was my story. I wish I just had no blemish. And I love hearing testimonies from people who just go, you know what, by God's grace, that was just never my deal. I've never had that struggle. I love hearing that story. It's a story of hope. So if you have that story, be bold and share it because we need your innocence. But for many, I know that you're saying that wasn't my story. That's not my story. It wasn't mine. Lots of mistakes and errors along the way. But I love what Maddie talked about when she was sharing last week about these thoughts going through her mind. Now something kicked in. This is a battle. I'm fighting for this. I related to that so much. For me, my pattern was when I came home late at night and my roommates were gone and I was emotionally weary. If I put that emotional weary thing in there, whoo, it was bad. And what I would end up doing is maybe either just being by myself, just vegging out, whatever would happen. And it was late at night. That was when I would start to have struggles and fantasy would just come and I'd be attacked with so many thoughts and just so many frustrating things go through my mind that I just like, gosh, I thought I was over this. I'm a leader now. How can this happen? Lie from hell is that leaders don't struggle. And I'd have these thoughts, God, help me. But it would get worse sometimes. Like the Bible talks about when the house gets cleaned out, that you go back and get 7 demons, and 7 demons come and fill the house, and it's even more intense unless you clean that house out completely. That's what I felt like. I felt like I had gone and kicked one out, about 7 more had come. And in the middle of that fight, I just remember saying, there would be nights I would be just literally get on all fours in my room and say, God, show me that you're here. I need you, God. Literally on all fours, just rocking back and forth. I need you, God. I want you, God. If a roommate had walked in, again, they'd been like, what are you doing? But there was something inside of me. I need you, Jesus. And someone once asked me during that time in my community, they said, let me ask you a question, Carl. If this happens to you when you're emotionally dry, then what are you doing to go to bed spiritually full? I was like, I don't know. I don't have time to have quiet time. It's like 12. I'm exhausted, or 1 or whatever. And they're like, don't do that. Go to bed spiritually full. So I would go to bed at night and that was my pattern. I see it going, then I have to stop. And I would pull out the Bible if it's 1 in the morning, and I would just start reading, which often helped me because when I read, I go to sleep. And so it would put me to sleep. So the last thing that was in front of my eyes was the Word of God. And then I would pray in the Spirit, often for just minutes on end, fighting the spiritual battle with spiritual gifts. And if you're wondering what that means, Jimmy's going to address that this week at church on Sunday. But I would just fight it because I was saying, I've got to go to bed full. Because right now, what looks like a banqueting feast to me is just giving in to this sin and getting it over with. And something I had to switch and say, no, this is trash before my eyes. I'm lovesick for him. And truly, he must be more satisfying. The banquet must be more satisfying than what I'm struggling with right now. Tonight as we end, I just want to ask you this question one more time. Do you want to be healed? If you want to be healed, something has to rise up inside of you and say, enough. I'm tired of being lame. I'm tired of laying here. I'm tired of this sickness. I don't want to lay on this mat any longer. I don't want to live addicted to pornography. I don't want to live dealing with these struggles with my boyfriend. I don't want to live continuing to cross these lines. I don't want to live just living out the fantasies that come to my mind. I don't want to live in this world. This man had been bedridden for 38 years. Something inside of him to say, I won't do 39. And something inside of you needs to rise up and say, I won't do 39. I won't be set free. Right there, Andrew's going to help you out. I will not give myself to this sin for any more time. Everybody's eyes right here. Something has to rise up and say, I'm all done. 38 years is enough. For you, 18 years is enough. For you, 1 year is enough. Something's got to rise up. Tonight, do you want to be healed? If you want to be healed, then I believe that tonight God's going to put something inside of you to remind you the feast to come is better than what we've been feasting on.